Let's continue with our going through the book of Galatians, looking at chapter 2, verses 17 through 19. Paul wrote, "But if in our endeavor to be justified in Christ, we too were found to be sinners, is Christ then a servant of sin? Certainly not. For if I rebuild what I have torn down, I prove myself to be a transgressor. For through the law I have died to the law, so that I might live to God." In life, everyone serves something and someone. Serving a thing is actually a very foolish endeavor. Years ago, I decided to rebuild a motorcycle. It was a 1977 Harley-Davidson Ironhead motorcycle. I spent months working on the bike to get it running and rideable. And then as I was doing my research on it, I found out that these Ironheads were produced during the AMF years. That's when AMF owned Harley-Davidson. And they were known for having quality, design, and reliability issues. Someone said to me that for every hour you rode one of these particular bikes, you needed to spend 10 hours in maintenance. And that was just a slight exaggeration of the truth. In time, I got the bike running, but I spent a lot of money and a lot of time rebuilding and then continually repairing the bike. In a sense, I became a servant of the motorcycle. Now, how foolish it is for us to become a servant of a thing, especially since there is a higher way. Paul, as we know, was contending with the teaching of the Judaizers, those people that were legalists, and they said that without works of the law, no person could be justified before God. In this letter, he made many poignant statements. And here he stated that if in an effort to be justified by faith in Christ they were sinners, then Christ would also be a servant of sin. Now, this could hardly be the case. Jesus was not a servant of sin. He was a servant of righteousness. But moreover, in this context, Paul makes this bold statement and vital statement. Paul indicated that he died to the law in order that he might live to God. Paul had a higher calling. Formerly, Paul understood that he needed to follow the law in order to justify himself before God. In essence, he had become a slave to the law. Yet under grace, he died to the law, and not being a slave to it, and he answered a higher call. Now he would be a servant of the living God. One of the arguments that the legalists historically have made is that people under grace can do whatever they want to do, and this would lead one to loose living because they could just be covered by grace. That means loose living means transgression. They could sin willy-nilly, but they were under grace. But we don't see this in practice. In practice, we see that people who are truly born again have answered a higher calling. Thus, they recognize that they are to live to God and not anything else. This higher calling moves people to extraordinary heights. They seek not to stay within the external constraints around them to become righteous, but to pursue the righteousness of God, which takes them to a higher level of righteousness. The righteousness required, the righteousness that comes by faith. Now, staying within constraints is probably a good thing and necessary for lawless people. Yet believers in Jesus have an inner drive to pursue our higher calling, that is to serve the living God. The result is a radically different life than we had before. Rather than just avoiding being bad, we pursue the greater righteousness of God because of this high calling. And rather than trying in an impossible effort to meet some form of minimal standards of acceptance, we realize that by grace we already have been accepted by God. And moreover, in this light, we strive for the righteousness of the one who saved us, not just in word, but also in deed. Like Paul stated, through the law I have died to the law so that I might live to God. That's the statement that every believer in Jesus Christ, true believer, makes. He lived to serve God for the glory of God. And in the same way, every one of us as believers formerly served something. It may have been material things, human philosophies, or even religious systems. However, when we were saved by grace through faith, we entered into a higher call that has set us on a higher path. And that path is the pursuit of God and His righteousness.